Mr. President, October 7th, 2023 is a day that will be forever emblazoned in our hearts. Young women and men, nursing babies, mothers, fathers, grandparents, all killed with a cruelty that knew no limits. They were killed for one reason: because they were Jews. Acts of unspeakable terror, yet speak of it we must, were slaughtered in their innocence for one reason: because they were Jews. And in too many places, those deaths were not condemned, even today, even in this council chamber. In some, they were celebrated. In too many, they were denied. No context, no false equivalence can possibly justify this terrible atrocity. We thank you, Mr. President, for the way that Brazil's presidency of the Council has given the terrorist atrocity by Hamas on October 7th and their tragic impact on human life and dignity, as well as the peace and security in the region, the attention that these issues so richly deserve. We must stand united in recognizing the horror of the massacres of October 7th, 2023. And yes, in full support of peace for both Israelis and Palestinians who deserve to live in security with dignity and without fear. Canada is unequivocal in our support for Israel's right to defend itself. No state, no one in this room, no state could possibly fail to respond to the nature of the attack that was suffered on that day. Not one of us, in all honesty, can look in the mirror and say our governments would not respond. All has to be done in accordance with international law. But Israel has another right that all of us have as well: the right to mourn, to comfort the afflicted, to honor each of the 1,400 killed. Yes, as do the Palestinians and all those who are losing loved ones in this terrible conflict. As has been said by others, even wars have rules. Counterterrorism measures must comply with all obligations under international law. The duty to protect civilians applies to each and every one of us. We continue to demand that Hamas release all hostages. The taking and holding of hostages is an ongoing war crime. It must stop, and it can stop today. We'd like to recognize the leadership that's been demonstrated by so many partners in seeking to reduce the fallout and civilian loss of life. This includes the tireless diplomacy by our friends in the United States, an important regional gathering by Egypt, critical negotiations led by Qatar, and the active engagement of so many ministers today, as invited by Brazil as chair. In all of these settings, we have shared our grave concerns for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which continues to deteriorate. We welcome the agreements that have been reached between Israel and Egypt to enable the start of crossings into Gaza, but in order to prevent a deeper catastrophe for Palestinian civilians in Gaza, we must all do more. Earlier today, my Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, stated that Canada supports humanitarian pauses in order to protect civilians, to get more humanitarian assistance in, and to get foreign nationals out of Gaza. Thus far, Canada has committed $60 million in humanitarian assistance. It will go to trusted partners, including UN agencies, to address the urgent needs of the most vulnerable civilians in this crisis. Monsieur le Président.
President, it's essential that this conflict does not become any worse or expand into the neighbouring region. Iran's rhetoric supporting Hamas, declarations made by the terrorist group Hezbollah, and the launching of missiles by actors in Yemen and Lebanon are incendiary and deeply troubling. We are deeply concerned by ongoing actions of Iran and groups which this Council has classified as terrorists. They aim to destabilise peace and security in the Middle East. The atrocities of 7 October have once again reminded the world that anti-Semitism is not an artefact of the past, but a daily reality experienced by too many Jewish communities around the world. My country last week appointed the former Secretary General Special Representative for the UN Support Mission in Afghanistan, Ms. Deborah Lyons, as our new Special Envoy to preserve the memory of the Holocaust and the fight against anti-Semitism. She works alongside Amira Al-Baghawabi, the Special Representative of Canada for the fight against Islamophobia. These two women will work together to respond to the growing dangers of hatred in all of its forms. Canada firmly supports the Israeli and Palestinian peoples in their rights to live in peace, security, with dignity and without fear. Now more than ever, we remain firmly attached to a two-state solution. There can be no peace in the Middle East without a viable political perspective which makes it possible to make that perspective a reality.
Canada does not believe for a moment that Hamas represents the Palestinian people. Palestinians and Israelis, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and the followers of all faiths, let those who are united in suffering be joined together in the search for peace. If I can paraphrase a famous poem by Shakespeare, Israelis and Palestinians all have hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions. They are fed with the same food. They are hurt with the same weapons. They are subject to the same diseases. They are healed by the same means. They are warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as all of us are. They mourn when their children and loved ones die. They aspire to freedom, and they seek security. They share trauma and pain and sadness. May they all find truth, justice, and reconciliation. On this day, UN Day, let us seek together to finally end the scourge of war between Israel and the State of Palestine. Thank you, Mr. President.